Dick Stockton joining us now. Dick, how are you this morning?
You know, I'm really good, Dan. It's great to be on with you, and it seems like only yesterday that he scored the 63.
It was only 30 years ago. What do you remember about that day?
Well, you know what a lot of people don't remember, perhaps, is that, number one, the Bulls won only 30 games, that Jordan, missed, 64 games with a broken ankle, broken foot.
Yep.
They didn't want him to play many minutes or even jeopardize his career by going on. The Celtics were the dominant team, maybe one of their greatest of all time, and the Celtics were in the process of sweeping the Bulls. The Bulls really had no chance in the series. I mean, they didn't have, a lot of the great supporting players that he had later. They had Dave Corzine and Orlando Woolridge. They were good players, but not the kind of players like Scottie Pippen was and all those others. And so, the Celtics were also unimpressed with Jordan. He didn't play that much that year. It was his second year. And they said, who is this guy anyway?
Well, you did have sort of that phantom call at the end of regulation where they called Kevin McHale a foul on Jordan attempting a three, and then he hits 3 free throws to go into overtime. But was there a moment where you started to sense you're seeing something that you hadn't seen before?
Yes, Dan, and I was watching a show earlier, and I think it was the most important game that Jordan had played going into it, but it was building. And the way he was able to weave his way for short jumpers against that big front line the Celtics had, and the way he was able to bank in shots, he looked like a man on a mission, and he was obviously the best player on this team, and the team wasn't going to do much, and in fact, they lost the game. I mean, a lot of people would think, well, Jordan scored 63 and they won the game, but I think that he opened the eyes of the Celtics in that game when it was over. Larry Bird said, we just saw God disguised as Michael Jordan.
I do think that was transformational for the rest of the NBA. Maybe not Jordan, but in the eyes of everybody else, where you're trying to get the respect of, the Lakers with Magic. You had the Pistons. Like, Jordan wanted to say, hey, include me in with the big names, and I think that was sort of a coming out party for him.
No question about it, Dan. I mean, here's a team that won 30 games. I mean, they were 37 games worse than the Celtics. And it's 1-8. They make the playoffs, one of the worst teams record-wise ever to get into postseason. And now he's playing against this tremendous team. And it's not the Bulls we remember later on. It'd be several more years before they were able to really reach what they, achieved during the time of the Bulls' domination. And when he scored the 63, I think it really raised, another level the interest of the NBA. I mean, we started with, the Doctor, and then we went to Jordan and Bird was there. Bird scored, by the way, 36 points in that game.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who plays 53 minutes of this double overtime game. And I think that was one of the stamps that made the NBA make the big jump.
You also called Jordan hitting the jumper over poor Craig Elo in the Cleveland Cavaliers when everybody in the building thought you double-team Jordan. That's the only guy on the floor who can beat you, and they somehow let him beat them. What do you remember about that play, that call?
Well, I remember that it went down to the wire. In fact, Elo hit a big shot. Elo, it went back and forth, and the Cavaliers were a dominant team.
Yes.
And I think that they beat them 5 times during the regular season. You're an Ohio guy, right? You were probably rooting for the Cavs.
That was a great Cavaliers team, one of the great teams to never win a title.
You're right. And then he gets that shot, and I think the greatest thing about that shot was the way he jumped like forever, 4 or 5 feet in the air, and pumped his fist, the first of many we would see. And that was a huge victory. And I think we kind of knew that this was the kind of guy that would deliver in situations like that. I mean, we know, again, in the NBA Finals when he fed Steve Kerr, the open man. But, getting back to that Boston game, I mean, everyone guarded Jordan in that game. Bird, you name the guy, they were on him, and they couldn't stop him. And you would think that a team of that ilk at the time, playing on the parquet floor, would manage to, they trapped him all over the place. And the 63, that's what makes it great, is that he was really the only threat.
You also called the Carlton Fisk Game 6, 1975 World Series, the If It Stays Fair. So many great moments become greater moments because the person who's calling the action, it's natural, it's honest. Al Michaels saying, "Do you believe in miracles?" It just captured the moment. It didn't overshadow the moment. It complemented the moment. If it stays fair, it sounds simple, but in the moment to say it and sort of let Carlton Fisk action, which need no words, I thought was the brilliant part of that. If it stays fair, and you saw Fisk, and there's a talent, a knack of staying out of the way, and you certainly did it.
Well, thank you for that, Dan. I mean, it was no other way, and as I've said to many, many times, you can call a drive, hits a deep left center field. It could be if he stays, way back, and all that stuff. Red Barber's call on, the Gianfrido catch in the '47 World Series, but this wasn't one of them. This was a line shot, and you couldn't give it any, poetic kind of call. You had to say, what was your instinct that moment? And I think that's what Al did, in that Miracle on Ice. It was his instinct that took over, and you can't plan these things. And if you do, it sounds like you did. And, so it was just instinctive and, and then let the moment take its, call. I mean, the crowd's yelling. What beats the pictures and the sounds? Then John Kiley playing the organ as he circles the bases. And, it's just a natural thing. And you just have to be blessed that you happen to be there at the right time at that moment to be able to make a call like that in a game like that.
Do you have any sports memorabilia you've collected over the years with games you've done?
Well, I do. And, I have dstockton.com, which is my website, and I have a lot of the highlights that I have done. I mean, I have not collected jerseys or sneakers from players or any of those things. But to me, I do remember the calls of plays that I've been part of, and I have a lot of that. And there's a lot of things that I remember, and a lot of areas, and pictures that are in my office that are really memorable pictures. With Michael Jordan and I actually, holding a cigar in the locker room many years ago. But I have a lot of those photos, and the memories are great, and they're there. And the one thing that is interesting about the Jordan thing, and I thought of this when I got the call from Todd about being on, is that everyone thinks the Bulls won the game that day, and they didn't. The Celtics won, and it's similar to the '75 World Series.
Yeah. Whenever
I run into Johnny Bench, Dan, he says to me, "Dick, just remember who won the World Series, '75." And Dan, I tell him, wasn't that the series that was called off after 6 games? They decided to just make it even?
Well, you also had that competition between Bench and Fisk as to who was the best catcher, and Thurman Munson was also in there as well. So I can imagine Bench still being a little competitive there with Carlton Fisk.
Yes, and they did win.
Yes, they did. Hey, Dick, great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us. Pipes sound great, and good luck.
Thank you, Dan. Good to be on with you to remember that 3 decades ago. Hard to believe.
Dick Stockton, dstockton.com for his website there.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.